I knew something was wrong the second I stepped off the plane in Guangzhou. My grandfather's driver, Mr. Lei, was supposed to be waiting. He never missed an airport pickup in 20 years, but this time, no sign of him. Instead, a different car idled by the curb, a black Audi with tinted windows, my father's favorite brand. The driver, a stone-faced young man in a suit, stepped forward. "Your parents sent me," he said in Mandarin. I hadn't told them I was coming. My pulse ticked up, but I forced a smile, playing along. Of course, how thoughtful of them. The ride was silent, but tension coiled in my gut like a loaded spring. Guangzhou's skyline blurred past, neon reflecting off the rain-slicked streets. I gripped my phone, half tempted to text my lawyer, but something told me to wait. When we pulled up to my family's old home, a 3-story villa in Yuxi, I expected warmth, nostalgia. Instead, it felt like stepping into an ambush. My mother sat at the dining table, sifting through paperwork like this was any other evening. My father stood by the window, swirling a glass of scotch. Neither of them looked surprised to see me. "We need to talk," I said, skipping the pleasantries. My mother exhaled, setting down her pen. "We figured you'd show up sooner or later." I glanced around. "Where's Grandpa's factory? Why is it shut down?" My father sipped his drink. "Because it's no longer ours." His words hit like a gut punch. I stared at them, waiting for the joke, the explanation, but there was nothing. "You sold it," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. My mother barely blinked. "Yes, months ago. You were busy in New York, so we handled it." Handled it? Like they had thrown away an old pair of shoes. I took a slow breath, trying to stay calm. "It wasn't yours to sell." "Technically, it was," my father said smoothly. "You inherited it, but we managed the business. It was failing. We did what was best." I forced a laugh. "Best for who?" No answer. I reached into my pocket, pulling out my grandfather's will, the original copy, notarized and sealed. I had read it a dozen times. My name was on every asset. My name was on the company. There was no clause allowing them to act on my behalf. I tossed the paper onto the table. "This says otherwise." My mother barely glanced at it. "You should speak to our lawyer." There it was, the deflection, the corporate maneuvering. I leaned in, voice low. "Fine. I'll talk to your lawyer, but I hope you realize something. If what you did was illegal, you're both going to lose a hell of a lot more than the factory." My father's expression darkened, but he said nothing. I turned on my heel, grabbed my coat, and walked out. The black Audi was still waiting, but this time, I wasn't getting in. I had my own plans, and my lawyer had just found something they hadn't expected. I didn't go to their lawyer, not yet. That would have been playing their game, and I had no intention of walking into a rigged fight. Instead, I went to see Mr. Lei. He was more than just my grandfather's driver. He was the closest thing to a confidant my grandfather ever had. If anyone knew what had really happened to the factory, it was him. His apartment was in an older part of Guangzhou, tucked away in a quiet alley lined with lanterns. When he opened the door, his eyes widened. "I knew you would come," he said, stepping aside, "but I thought it would be sooner." That hit me like a slap. "You knew?" Mr. Lei sighed, gesturing for me to sit. His place was small but spotless. Framed photos of my grandfather lined the walls. "I knew something was wrong the day they announced the sale. Your parents fired half the staff before the papers were even signed. No severance, no explanation." I clenched my jaw. "They made it seem like the business was failing," he continued. "That's what they told the workers, but that wasn't true." My chest tightened. "How do you know?" Mr. Lei gave me a long look before standing up and crossing the room. He opened a cabinet, pulled out an old metal lockbox and set it on the table between us. The key was already in the lock. He turned it. Inside was a stack of documents. "I saved what I could," he said, handing me a folder. Financial records, orders. The factory was turning a profit even in its final months. I flipped through the pages, my stomach sinking with every number. The factory hadn't been dying, it had been thriving. "They wanted to sell it before you could take control," Mr. Lei said quietly. I gritted my teeth. My parents hadn't just sold my inheritance, they had lied to me about why. Who bought it? I asked. Mr. Lay hesitated. That's where things get complicated. I glanced up. What do you mean? He handed me another paper. This one was different, a contract, not for the sale, but for a partnership. I scanned the names, and then I saw it. My father hadn't just sold the business, he had sold it to someone he owed money to. A name I recognized instantly, a name I never expected, a name that made my blood run cold. I stood up, gripping the paper. I need to see this lawyer, I said. But now, it wasn't just about taking back my factory, it was about finding out what the hell my father had got himself into. I didn't sleep that night. My mind spun, piecing together the betrayal like a shattered mirror. My parents hadn't just stolen from me, they had used my grandfather's life's work to settle a debt. In the name on that contract, Zhang Wei, a businessman on paper, a shark in reality. He didn't buy companies, he swallowed them, then gutted them for parts, rebranding the carcasses under his ever-growing empire. He didn't just want my grandfather's factory, he wanted his legacy, and my father had given it to him. By morning, I was sitting across from my parents' lawyer in a glass-walled office in the heart of Guangzhou. His name was Mr. Sun, and he had the slimy confidence of a man who thought he'd already won. He folded his hands on the table, smiling. "Your parents informed me you had concerns." I dropped the contract onto the desk. "This is my concern." His eye smile didn't waver. "Ah, yes, the sale agreement, you mean." "The illegal sale agreement?" His eyebrow twitched. "The sale was completely above board." I leaned in. "Then why does my grandfather's will say they couldn't sell it?" I expected him to falter, to hesitate, something, but instead he just sighed like he was dealing with a child who didn't understand the rules. "There was a clause in your grandfather's will," he admitted, "but your parents acted under an emergency directive. The company was at risk. They had the legal right to—" "No, they didn't." I pulled out the copy of the will my lawyer had sent me the night before. Mr. Sun barely glanced at it. "A will is subject to interpretation." I clenched my fists under the table. This was the game, drag me into legal mud until I either drowned or gave up. Then he did something that made my blood boil. He smiled. "Look, I understand you're upset, but your parents did what was necessary." I forced myself to breathe. "Where's Zhang Wei?" That caught him off guard. "Excuse me?" I tapped the contract. This sale wasn't just a business move. My father owed Zhang money, didn't he? Silence. I had him. "I want a meeting," I said. Mr. Sun scoffed. "You think Zhang Wei will meet with you?" I stood up. "He will when he finds out my parents sold him something they didn't legally own." That wiped the smirk off his face. "Do you have any idea who you're dealing with?" he asked, his voice low. "Yeah," I said. "Do they?" I walked out before he could answer. I wasn't just going to fight this, I was going to burn the whole damn thing down. I didn't wait for Mr. Sun to arrange a meeting. That would have given him time to spin the story, to warn my parents, to tighten their grip. No, I went straight to Zhang Wei's headquarters myself. His office was in a sleek high-rise building overlooking the Pearl River, the kind of place where power wasn't flamboyant, it was assumed. The receptionist barely glanced at me before saying, "Do you have an appointment?" "No," I said, "but tell him it's about the Guangzhou factory he just acquired." That got her attention. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. "He's not available," she said carefully. I smirked. "I'll wait." She opened her mouth to argue, but then something behind me shifted. The air changed. Footsteps, controlled, deliberate. I turned around. Zhang Wei himself stood in the doorway of the executive lounge, watching me like I was a curiosity. He was younger than I expected, maybe late 40s, in a dark suit that probably cost more than my entire college tuition. "You have 5 minutes," he said. I followed him into his office, a cavernous room lined with floor-to-ceiling windows. The view screamed control. He gestured to a seat, but I didn't take it. "I'm here about the sale of my grandfather's factory," I said. He sat down, adjusting his cufflinks. Your parents' factory? He corrected. I dropped the will onto the desk. Mine. He glanced at it, then at me, unimpressed. You came all this way to show me a piece of paper? I came to tell you that the sale was fraudulent. That got his attention. His fingers drummed against the desk. That's a serious accusation. It's not an accusation, it's a fact. I leaned forward. My parents had no legal right to sell it, which means you don't own it. A silence. Then he laughed, a slow, deliberate chuckle, like I had just told him the funniest joke in the world. You think a will is going to stop me? He said. I didn't blink. I think a lawsuit will. He smirked. Lawsuits take time, money, influence. I have all three. Do you? I clenched my jaw. Then he tilted his head. Your father didn't tell you, did he? The hairs on my neck stood up.